Hi guys. This is only my second time going live, so I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. We'll see how it goes. Um, so there's just what's appearing to happen. There's just energy. This is the suggestion. This is an illumination. It's not a teaching. It's a sharing that illuminates, like a discussion in which everything can be seen to be nothing and nothing is everything, and that sense that you are separate, moving in a world that's outside of you, that can apparently collapse. And that if that happens, it's not even really a happening. Nothing even happens. Great, thanks Bill, appreciate it. um, so this is the shift from thinking living in a reality where something is happening in time and space and everything is real, to the seeing that this is nothing appearing to happen. And that's indescribable. Nobody has ever been able to describe it. But when there is a sense that you are an individual who has a life, there's a living in the real, and there's a subject object reality. And in that reality, it's dissatisfying because there's a sense of me in the big world out there. And there's a sense of moving in my own knowing. It's a closed loop of knowing. And through that knowing, it's you feel you can protect yourself from a world that's out there, and you can broker a better deal for yourself, and that's seems to be confirmed in the story, and that's fine, except that it's very dissatisfying because it's not actually the natural reality. It's a subject object reality where things are seen as things and separate objects, and there's a staleness to it because everything isn't new and boundless and infinite. It's imprisoned in that subject object reality, you and somebody else, you and something else, and this sense of you just goes completely unquestioned, really, for the most part. And this is then a suggestion that there actually is no you, and there never has been. There's no separate you. So when you hear all of these communications telling you how to find oneness and wholeness, the majority of them are teachings of ignorance, really, because they see a separate person who can do something to not be a separate person. And that feels separate loves that because it's been spoken to energetically. It's given steps A, B, and C to get there. And that seems to be the way the world functions. So it's very appealing and attractive. Then there's another illumination that is not a teaching, it's just a sharing. And this is concerned really with resonance. It's a resonance. It's not to do with understanding, because understanding is only what the individual does. You understand, it's an abstraction. And it's simply an illumination that this, what appears to be happening, is simply energy, and it's nothing being everything. And there never has been a separate you in this. It always was a narrative. It was just a story. So at the moment, what appears to be happening, we hear the word narrative a lot the last few years, especially, and we're bombarded with these messages, and we're dealing with a very polarized, dichotomous situation where which side are you on? And if anyone says anything, uh, there's very little discussion now. There's very little discussion. There's no dialogue and discussion, really. There is some, but it's been shut down, and it's very polarized. So if you're not with us, you're against us, and if you're asking these questions, then you're one of those, whatever that means in whatever context it is. And this is, we're being uh, allegedly we're being kept safe by an authority, and we're going to be kept safe by keeping information from us. And that's very appealing as an individual, because the individual sees a higher authority and wants to be kept safe in that. and feels that that authority will keep them safe. So this is a communication that illuminates something different. It's not asking anything of you. It's not asking you to believe this side or this side. Actually, it's saying that there are no sides, and that the real sense that there is a left or a right or a higher authority or an inner and outer is simply from that energetic sense that you're an individual, that you're a separate self. And what's being suggested here actually is there is no separate self. It's just a story. It's a narrative. Although it feels energetically real, it really does feel like there's an inner and an outer. And it really does feel like there's an authority. And it really does feel like there's a you in here who's making decisions, who has a life, who reaps the rewards or the consequences of these decisions and is moving in time. It feels completely real until it's seen that it isn't. It's seen by nobody that there is no time, really. It's just a function in the story. Actually, this is infinite and boundless. And then everything changes. It's totally indescribable then. It's all a play of light. And what we see to have formally taken as being real and happening in time and space is just a play of light that is all about mining the individual, an agenda-led story. That's what it is. It's not right or wrong. It's just what appears to be happening, and and that's the way it is until it isn't. So this is, anyone can see this at any time. There's nothing required. There's no process with this because you are already unconditional love. You are already nothing being everything. So there you go. Yeah, this is kind of different for me because usually I have people asking me questions. So you can just why am I seeing questions? Okay, now I see the questions, guys. Sorry. How does your message differ from Tony Parsons? Well, I mean, the first clear, uncompromising message I heard was the open secret. So it's a beautiful communication to me, completely uncompromising. So, I mean, I can't say it's the same message because nothing is the same as anything, but it's in that vein. It's an uncompromising, clear illumination that doesn't speak to anybody and doesn't see an individual, actually, just sees you only as whole and complete, that doesn't see a separate you. Ah, now I get it. See, I'm learning. I can touch the screen and they come up, and if I don't touch it, they go away. Why can't my mind understand no self? Because the the sense of understanding, you can understand actually. Loads of people understand that they're not an individual. You can arrive at that conclusion, and that's fine. But what's being suggested here is actually the individual is that living in a closed loop of its own knowing, and actually this aliveness is unknowable. Actually, it's not. It's any knowing is just an abstraction, and the abstraction comes from you feeling separate to it. So it's irrelevant, completely irrelevant. So you knowing or not knowing that you are not, that the individual is an illusion is completely irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. So when someone lives as a person, whatever he does isn't the person doing, and thus reinforcing it. So when someone lives, people feel that they're living as, people feel that they have a life, very much so. And everything in the story tells you that you have a life. So there's life, there's just aliveness, and then you have a life. Where you have it, I'm not quite sure, but you have it. You're not just aliveness, you have a life. There's a separate you that has a life. There's a you that hears a you that speaks, a you that sits on the chair, a you that has sensations in the body. All of this, there's a separate you there. In the story, and that's confirmed then because you meet other yous, other individuals, and they have a life as well, and all of that. And there's causality. One thing happens, and another thing happens to other people. It happens to you, and this is the illumination that actually there's just aliveness, peopling, and aliveness is actually energy or nothing being everything. It feels from what you say that if I meditate, I'm reinforcing the sense of me. But then after here's this, if I don't meditate, it would also be reinforcing the sense of me. Feels like I'm doomed. So actually, um, what I'm saying is that there's nobody meditating. That's really what I'm saying. That there is nobody. Um, there's no individual, and there never has been. So you add yourself to things. So if there's cycling a bike, there's cycling a bike. But then if you feel like an individual, you feel like you're cycling the bike. So same with everything else, walking down the road or meditation. So meditation isn't right or wrong, no more than cycling is right or wrong. But there's a sense maybe that it's going to get you somewhere. And that's, and if that's what's happening, that's what's happening. There are plenty of people who just enjoy meditating, maybe, and they don't feel that it will ever. They don't really feel that they will become enlightened or anything like that. But they enjoy how they feel when they meditate, and that's what's appearing to happen. So there's no value on any of that at all. It either appears to happen or it doesn't. When I say that what you're referring to there about the reinforcing is that what's been illuminated here is that there already is no separate self, but there are plenty of teachers. This is not a teaching. I'm not a teacher. There's no teachers, no gurus. There's nothing to know or learn. There's nowhere to get to. But there are plenty of those who are teachers, and even those who say that they're not teachers, but they clearly are offering something. And they would say that, oh, I've seen oneness. My sense of separateness fell away. And basically, this is what you can do for your sense of separateness to fall away. Meditation would be high on the list of those things, ready and softening the self, all of these things. So through some sort of progressive endeavor or process, you can eliminate yourself, or the illusion of you can dispel the illusion of you. So it's obviously a teaching of ignorance, that's all. It's not right or wrong or anything. It's just what appears to be happening. What are my thoughts on teachers? I just said what my thoughts on teachers are. So there are no teachers. It's an illusion. There's no such thing as a teacher. If there's a teacher, then it's in knowing, and there is something to know, and there is there is really someone who's separate, and there's somewhere to get to. And so it's just within the story then. It's very seductive that there are teachers. It's very appealing to the individual. Because the individual is in a closed loop of knowing, and also from that sense of little old me very much feels there is a higher authority, God, the universe, whatever it is. There's a higher. Of course there feels like there's a higher because there's little me, and there's kind of and that's and then someone comes along and says, well, I found oneness and I can show you the way. Give me your hand, I'll show you the way. And if you feel lost and you feel unworthy, then that's kind of seductive. And again, that's just what's appearing to happen. It's not right or wrong. Free will is possible when there is no identification. Okay, so there is no free will. Is just part of the story. That's all. Free will is just part of the story. So the individual feels they have free will. It's just a story, that's all. People don't even have their own, most people don't even have their own ideas. They think it's their own idea. They think it's their own opinion that they've arrived at independently themselves. But when you break it down, anyway, it's just as part of the story. Is this resonance felt more in person? Yeah, I mean, there's no rules around this. Like, someone could watch this on YouTube and then boom, the sense of separateness could appear to fall away. Stunning. I have no idea. Um, and someone could feel that in a meeting, a real meeting. I mean, certainly when there's a gathering in a group, there's a kind of a boundlessness to that, and I feel energetically being in a group, being in a room together with a group of people where this is shared, there's a boundlessness to that. But as there is on the internet, on Zoom meetings to some degree, and some people are more tuned into that, but I think it's maybe a little bit easier to be in your own little bubble than Zoom. Um, and when there is silence, like apparent silence, when there's no talking, I think that is a bit more resonant in a room when there's a load of people in a room together. Oh, you're very welcome, Diddly D. I did nothing. You did nothing. Diddly D, what a nice name. Um, does shyness or self-consciousness apparently disappear? I've no idea what would really appear to happen for every character. The character is just a character. So usually what I would say about the character is kind of the way, the essence, the flavor of everyone is just the way they are. Kind of is dampened down by by the sense of being separate by the individual, because it becomes this long list of shoulds. I should be like this and I shouldn't be like that. So should and shouldn't, and so it kind of restricts the natural organic sense of the way you are. So when that sense of separateness isn't there, then the character is just boom, it just is the character, and how that character is, I have no idea. um, Self-consciousness really will collapse because uh, so it depends what you mean when you say self-consciousness, but consciousness and awareness are just knowing. That's all they are. They're just an aspect of feeling separate. They're a feature of knowing. Um, they're completely irrelevant, actually. So there's nobody to feel self-conscious or. But at the same token, there could be awkwardness because every character is different, and it could be anything could appear to happen. It's not a state. We're not talking about states here, or there's nobody in a state. Uh, Yeah, does the self fall away? Does suffering too? Not in the way that the individual thinks about it. The individual imagines suffering. The individual really, from what I can see, has some idea of what's being suggested here, and they very much feel that if I was to fall away, then I would be floating around in some nice, comfortable cloud, and nothing would really bother me anymore. Um, it would be nice and I wouldn't really feel pain, and it's actually not like that at all. It's not anything the individual could imagine it to be. So pain is more painful, if anything. Um, so it's just that there's nobody who is in pain. There's just pain is what's appearing to happen. Um, and it's just energy. So there's just what's appearing to happen, and that's all there is anyway. But then you can see that some people feel like an individual energetically because they add themselves. There's an addition. There is an addition. They don't add themselves. They're not there. But there's an addition of this sense of me, and then they feel they're the one who suffers. Would you do any in-person meetings in America? Yeah, I'm planning to go, but it doesn't look like it'll happen this year. But maybe free fall, huh? I don't know. Kind of booked up for a lot of this year, so but I would love to go. Yeah, absolutely. I have an invite to Asheville, I think, and it's probably the first place I go. While self-inquiry is meant to eradicate your sense of I, whenever I practice it by focusing in on my sense of I, it only seems to strengthen it. Are there only other methods to get closer to the self? So the suggestion being made here is that there is no separate self already. So there's no separate self to get closer to. So doing what you described there is, as I mentioned earlier, from some sort of teaching that will offer you a way to drop the self, and it will self-inquiry is one. Trace the I thought and see that there's no I. So the individual loves, the apparent individual loves all of those, keeps it very, very busy and safe in its, because it speaks to an I who can do something to not be there. Obviously there are no methods, because a method would be something that the individual would engage in and do. There's no way to get to what already is. Just already, this is it. This is the amazing thing about what's being yearned for, is it appears to hide by just already being whatever is appearing to happen. It's incredible, actually. And the individual is lost looking for it, rejecting this in favor of what it thinks it is, some model. That's why there is that real sense of feeling that whatever you're yearning for, it's just around the next corner. And then you kind of get there, it's temporal and fleeting, and then you see, oh, there's another corner. And it's endless, because it's just a closed loop. Does attention increase once the sense of self drops? I can't say that it does. No, I have no idea what would appear to happen as regards what interests would be there or not there, or what would energetically draw someone. I have no idea. It'd be different for everyone, I'd imagine. Yeah, the story seems to appear to go around until it doesn't, and that's the way it is. I mean, you're being bombarded all the times with, you're being spoken to all the time. The individual is being fed all the time. Apparently, there is no individual really being fed, but in the story, you're being mined information. You're being mined and manipulated all the time. Of course, that's the way it works, and then that clarity, this song that's being sung is very, very rare. It's mostly that you're being spoken to and fed, and that's so. This can illuminate in a way energetically, very much that can be heard, and resonate. It can resonate, and energetically, that sense of self can fall away. That sounds like a cause and effect, but it's not really. It's just another thing that appears to happen, because the individual is guaranteed to fall away anyway, apparently, because you'll physically die. So on this, when the body stops functioning energetically, that sense of being separate collapses. And that's all death is, really. Death, there is no death really, because there's no beginning and no end. There's only a beginning and an end for that feels separate, that feels it started and feels it will end. Actually, what you are is not this story called you. It's what you are is actually just energy, which is nothing being everything. So this is actually death, you could say. There is no death is another way of saying it, because this is nothing being everything. So there's not there's not a thing called death and a thing called life. That sense that there is a thing called death and a thing called life only comes from a sense that you're separate. Can thoughts or feelings of separation still arise after the illusion? Yeah, absolutely. Anything could appear to happen, but it wouldn't happen for anybody. That's the difference. Anything could appear to happen. I mean, thoughts are not an issue. Thoughts are just thoughts. The sense, the apparent problem is you feel it's your thought. There's a really felt sense that it's your thought, and then it's an issue. So then the neurosis kicks in. Anything could appear to happen. Anything, but the sense that there's a you there that it's happening to is no longer there, and it's just the utter free fall of living in the unknown. It's completely indescribable, absolutely ordinary. It's just totally, yeah, just what's appearing to happen. Okay, can't keep up with these now, they're flying in. So is the sense of self a sensory experience or a thought. I wouldn't say that it's a thought. No, for me, it's a contracted energy. It's a sense, energetic, contracted sense of feeling separate, and it's largely run out of the brain. Um, this kind of abstraction seems to be run out of the higher brain, but it's not just a brain thing or a mind thing. It's energetically in the whole, cellularly. There's a sense of being separate, of an inner and an outer. So I would describe it as an energy. If it was just a thought or an idea or a concept, concepts can be kind of changed with education, and it's not like that. Can you talk about the individual is left with nothing? Yeah, I mean, the individual can't see nothing, actually. Nothing can be seen because the individual is just in a reality, a subject object reality of something or the real. So it only sees an object. So no thing is not, it's not seen at all. So that's a half alive kind of thing that the individual is. It's very dissatisfying. And then when no thing is seen, it's not seen by you, because it's just that subject or that sense of you just isn't there anymore. And then clearly everything is empty, completely empty, totally and utterly empty, because everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And that's unconditional love. Um, would you recognize an ego that kind of likes the attention and has an answer to everything? Like, I mean, ego for me is just a story. People describe ego. I understand what they mean by that, but all I see really is that there's either a sense of someone being separate or not. And if there is that sense that they feel separate, that's just simply what's going to happen. It doesn't, that is also just unconditional love. It's just energy. It doesn't really matter. There's nobody that has an ego. There's a sense in the story that you, the individual, has an ego. And really, when most people talk about ego, I just feel they're actually just talking about the individual, really. So whether someone has a massive ego or no ego at all, it's just all in the story, really. So the story is just words, gibberish. Well, it is what it is. It's not anything. It's just energetic. It's a narrative. But it doesn't feel like a narrative to you. You don't feel like a narrative or a story. You feel absolutely real. You feel like you have choice, that you have a life, and that you're moving in time and space, and everything is causal. That's the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. This is just an illumination. That is a suggestion. That's all. There's nobody being asked to believe anything here. It wouldn't make any difference anyway. So the story is just, it's just a story. That's all. It's the duality collapses, and everything is just a play of light, and it's not describable. Even them words, it's not describable. It's everything is just energy. What about hierarchies in the animal kingdom? Yeah, I mean, there are. I think there seem to be hierarchies, but I would see them just as functional, and then the individual feels they're just absolutely real then. So the individual almost hijacks everything, and there's violence in the natural, in nature. That's the way it appears, and then it seems that the individual makes things more pronounced, and gets a hold of things. That's the way I would see it. But it's also just, all of it's just energy. And the ones that are, I feel also the hierarchies in the animal kingdom, they're very functional. It's just someone is apparently in a role, but there's only that role they're only in that role, or the animal's only in that role as that role appears to function. There's no actual authority in it, and that's why it can just collapse very quickly. Wouldn't excitement go? Well, the kind of excitement that the individual has actually does collapse, because the individual is very much looking for peak experiences all the time, because this is rather boring to the individual. It's just sitting on a seat, so there's always looking for that dopamine hit of something more exciting than this. So that collapses, and there's nothing more or less exciting. There's no special events really at all. There's no events even. There's just simply aliveness, which is nothing being everything. So I mean that in that way, it's like pulling down the mountains and pulling up the valleys in a kind of way. I don't think my wife would be happy when I'm not stressed about refurbishing the house because it's already empty. Yeah, I mean, try using this to get to win some argument or get out of something. It's not going to work out very well for you. It's okay. There's nothing appearing to happen. I don't have to do it. I mean, this is a useless communication anyway. If it's a clear communication, it's completely useless. I mean, there's nobody to convince of anything. There's nothing to know. There's just what's appearing to happen. Once the apparent self has apparently fallen away, can the illusionary self be re-established again? I mean, for me, if there's a sense of being separate, and then there's a reporting that I've fallen away, I'm not there, and then there's a sense of being separate again, then really there was just an in and out kind of thing happening anyway, really. And that's just what's appearing to happen, because nobody really falls away anyway. It's not a thing that happens. It's not a happening, because there is already no body. There's nobody typing there in the messages. There's just energy appearing as a phone and whatever. That's all there is. Did the me fall away for you? No, I mean, nothing happened. It was just seen there was no separate me. Nothing happened. I think I answered that in the last one, actually. Yeah, do I enjoy the story? There's a complete in loveness with what appears to be happening. A complete in loveness with what appears to be happening. So whatever that is enough. It's whole and complete, and it's full in all of its pleasure and pain and comfort and discomfort, and nothing can really be any other way. It's totally indescribable, actually. Nobody can ever describe it. You would never be able to, if your sense of self fell away, I'm presuming that there is a sense of self there, you would not be able to ring me up and tell me all about it, because you wouldn't be able to describe it. Nobody's ever been able to describe it, and yet it's completely ordinary and obvious. It's just whatever is appearing to happen. It's actually inescapable. What's yearned for is completely and utterly inescapable. There's a blackbird digging for worms in my lawn. Do you think children would resonate easier with this? I mean, I think that there's no need to communicate this to children whatsoever. Children are, there's an energy there that either feels separate or not. If this was an ideology, you would be speaking to children just in the very same way that if you were Buddhist, you'd be teaching them about Buddhism. If you're a Christian, you'd be teaching them about Christianity, which is fine. That's just what appears to happen. This is not an ideology or belief system, and there's no need to do any of that. Someone either feels separate or they don't. Children develop the way they develop, and it's all very energetic. Their sense of self is very amorphous and not so contracted until obviously we see the teenage years. Energetically something appears to happen, something crazy, and that's just the way it is, and it is almost like a rewiring, and energetically there's a sense then after that, say there is an after, there's not an after, but of a huge sense of kind of identity of being an adult or a young adult, and that's just all just appears to happen. There would be no agenda to interfere with any of that or to influence any of that at all. At the same time, someone could hear this and just resonate with it, whatever the age. Is it empty because the moment is immediately over and a story as memories, pictures, and videos, not real, just gone? Yeah, I mean, like the individual, like time is absolutely necessary for something to be actually happening for the real. So there's a real sense of time and space, and causality I describe as the same. It's the same as time and space. So there's that real sense of one thing happening, then another thing happening, and another thing happening. It feels absolutely real, and that's it. Um, that's the way it is for the individual. When the individual just doesn't, when there's no sense of separateness there anymore, there's not even a moment, really. Because if there's a moment, it implies there's a then and there's a now. There's no now or present or future or past. So there's no, it's not a moment. It's just this is eternal and infinite. There's just energy, and all I can say about it really is that there's nothing appearing to happen, So the realness collapses out of everything. The realness collapses because the realness was only there in that subject-object reality where you were a subject and everything was happening to you. Easy, yeah, simple. It is simple, actually. It's ridiculously simple. That's the problem. There's just whatever's appearing to happen. Am I in Donegal? No, I'm not in Donegal. I'm a long way from Donegal. Well, not that long. Maybe not as far as some of you. I've been in Donegal. It's beautiful. I was in Daniel's house a few times. Had a cup of tea. He's big into this stuff. Does this message imply that healing trauma isn't necessary? Yeah, I mean, healing trauma is just what appears to happen. There's no value put on it. But the suggestion being made is that there's actually nobody who does that. One of the misconceptions is that that I'm somehow suggesting that someone trying to heal some trauma is somehow wrong because it feeds to me, and I absolutely am not saying that at all. If someone has trauma, especially serious trauma, and especially below a certain age, in formative years, it's very limiting, and it's very it really inhibits your functioning. And if someone is trying to in some way address that, then that's a completely logical thing to do. This communication is going to the heart of it all and suggesting that actually there is no separate you. And if that's heard, then everything changes. Everything changes. Everything. If it's heard. If it's not, it's not. So all of that is just simply what appears to be happening. It completely makes sense. It's logical. So not okay. Where are we now? So not even knowing if this is different than that. So that what I said earlier was dualism is the individual is dualism. They're pure dualism. They're a dichotomous play of opposites, of inner, outer, up, down, life and death, good, bad, etc. It's all from that sense of separation in which there's a narrative, and that's the way it feels. There's a sense that I have a life. It's my life started at this point, and it will at some point end. I don't know when. And this is a suggestion that you don't have a life. You never had a life. Nobody has a life. There's not someone who has a life. There's aliveness. It's very simple. There's just aliveness. And aliveness is actually nothing being everything. So there's not this other thing called death. And the beginning and the end is all just in the narrative. It's just a story. There's no beginning or end, only in the story, obviously. So that's what's. Is there more life after the body dies? That's not really anything anybody can answer definitively, and all I can say is that there's no after. That's all I can say about that. Like trying to talk about death and what happens at death is the same for me as trying to talk about life. Life is this or life is that. It's totally impossible, and all that can be said is that there's no before or after. That everything is just energy. So you could say that death is just an energetic shift. I mean, even that's a bit of a story, but that's the way I see it. And I've been with plenty of people when they've died, apparently in the story, and it feels very much like that. When someone takes their last breath, it's just an energetic shift. And I feel the when they had their loved ones with them, energetically, they also felt this energetically. And talking to them afterwards, a lot of people would have a very little fear of death when they've seen that. For some, it's the opposite. It's absolutely traumatic, and they feel totally and utterly traumatized by it. And that's also just what's appearing to happen. Um, especially if they feel, especially if they see struggling, because what they do is, if they see someone struggling uh, to not die and they see pain, they actually imagine it, that they're afraid of what they're going towards, so they equate death with that struggle, and it doesn't actually tell you anything about the struggle. It doesn't tell you anything about death. It just tells you that that's what's happening. There's an effort to not die, and there's an effort to cling on. And that's also just energy. Are we confusing the beginning and the end of the human body with the beginning and the end of a life? Or is it that there's no beginning and end of the human body? There's an apparent beginning and apparent end to everything. There's the human body, and then there's a sense, then very quickly after a few months, there's an energetic sense of being, like for the first few months there's just aliveness, and then at some point the little infant sees the mother as separate after whatever amount of months, and then energetically it seems to be, or that could even happen in the womb. I'm not I wouldn't say so, but it could. And there is that sense, then it's an energy, and then everything in the story reinforces that, and then there's that lived sense of separation, and it's just an appearance, it doesn't matter. I think I have some kind of trauma coming up as painful sadness, and sometimes I think that is the reason I listen to this. Yeah, I mean, that's up to you to decide. There's just whatever is appearing to happen, and nobody's been asked to believe anything here, or there's nothing to be done. There's nothing to be known, nothing to be understood, and this people will obviously conceptualize what's been said as whatever that they want, and whatever their framework is, and whatever, that's fine. But that doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's all simply a resonance. If it can resonate what's said here, and yeah. Is it true that without me, life takes of the body needs the best possible way? Uh, Much better than me could possibly do. I'm not really sure what that means, but I guess what I would hear you saying is, well, me just complicates things. The individual just complicates. It's just an overlay, an addition, whatever way, additional software, and it's just it's not even really there. It's just completely uh, it, um, it's like a neurosis. Then it's completely unnecessary, and it's just a story anyway. So in a cruel way, you could say, yeah, everything functions a bit better without me, because me is just constantly trying to get somewhere, and constantly with some agenda all the time, and everything is complex with the individual, because the individual lives in knowing, so it thrives on complexity. Mm. Whereas when when there's no longer a sense of being an individual, it's just very simple, and the natural reality, just whatever's appearing to happen. Um, so curiosity arises, asking whether energy is a story. Yeah, I mean, there is no such thing as energy. It's just a word that's been used here to point towards something that's not describable. So what is the biggest difference when the illusion is seen through? It's impossible to describe, really. The realness collapses from everything, and there's everything is new. That's one aspect of it, maybe, that I didn't mention already. Everything is kind of second hand when you're alive, and somehow kind of there's a sense of boredom with that and a sense of staleness to it, because there's a sense of repetition through knowing, oh, it's Monday again, and oh, it's you again. I know you. I've spoken to you before. You've never met this person before, because they're not a separate person. There are no separate people. You don't meet. It's a story. It's a story. So the newness, everything is and isn't, because nothing is everything, and that's indescribable, and that can't be seen when you feel like an individual. Is there still a need for a romantic relationship when the false self falls away? There's no need for anything really. Need collapses. There's just what appears to happen. So that's maybe appears to happen or doesn't. I'm going to wind it up, guys. Yeah, different. I totally forgot how to do this, and then I just did it, and then I remembered. I'm going boom, boom. Um, Healing trauma seems to be necessary until there's a sense of safety and stability, which you can resolve into a non-experience of no one, just simply being a simple, pure, open immediacy. Nothing is necessary, actually. If there's a sense of wanting to do that and feeling that's just simply whatever's appearing to happen. That's what's being said. And actually, it can be seen. The one that feels they have serious trauma, their sense of separateness can appear to collapse. The individual can appear to collapse, and everything is different then. Everything is different. It doesn't have the same power it had when they felt like an individual. Thanks, guys. That was really nice to see you, and a nice way to spend a Friday, apparently. I'm trying to think of any announcements. A Zoom on Sunday. I'm back. I'll do Zooms on Wednesday morning and Wednesday evening, 9 o'clock Irish time, and 9 o'clock Sunday. So I'm kind of back doing them really regularly again. And other than that, check out my website. I've quite a few meetings. I'm in Brighton. Still have a couple of places in Brighton in August. I'm in Ireland in July. I'm in Sweden in September. And I'm putting a few things in for the rest of the year. So listen, there you go. Nice to see you. Thanks a million. Take care. Bye.